Jesus' birth. In 1643, the English Parliament outlawed not only Christmas, but Easter and other Christian celebrations. But by 1660, Christmas had become such a popular holiday that that law was repealed. After the Pilgrims arrived in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620, the English misgivings about Christmas celebrations continued. In 1659, people in Massachusetts who celebrated Christmas were fined. That law was struck down in 1681 because the popularity of observing Christmas had grown immensely. However, Christian groups remained divided over whether Christmas should be celebrated because of its ties to pagan observances. The Lutherans, the Dutch Reformed, the Catholic, and Anglican churches forged ahead with the celebrations, while the Baptists, the Presbyterians, the Quakers, and Puritans continued to rail against it. Even today, some Christian groups, including many Churches of Christ and Seventh-day Adventists, do not acknowledge Christmas as a religious observance. How does he conclude? Now Satguru Sivaya Subramanyat Swami has created a modern-day festival of Pancha Ganapati to coincide with the Christmas celebration for Hindus who are living in the West. And it's a means of participating in the festive season without all the trappings of another religious holiday. So what did they do? They did the same thing that everybody else has done. Well, there's a party this day anyway.
Let's join it.
Exactly.
We'll make it ours. We'll just take it.
We'll just bring everything into that December 25th pagan holiday, and we'll just all celebrate. But listen, that was a Hindu writing who understood that Christmas is a pagan holiday. It just seems to be the Christians, the people who are supposed to be following Christ, who don't seem to understand that. But everybody else does. Now, I never got to the Bible verses, so we're going to do that next week. We're going to read the real story of the birth of Christ. And we're going to, again, have to expose some of the traditions, like the wise men, who were never there when the baby was born. They came to the house he was living in when he was about 2, which explains why Herod killed all the children 2 and under. It's so illogical to think that the wise men could have gotten there. By the way, there weren't 3, and they weren't kings. Get that out of your head. So, is God mad? That's a really good question. James asked, so is God mad about this? What do you think? Does he love anything more than he loves his son? Oh, he loves his son. And the birth of his son and the death of his son are the 2 most magnificent events in human history on planet Earth. God became man in human flesh, and he died for the sins of his people when he let his own creation nail him to a tree. These are the most magnificent events. The epoch of human life on planet Earth are the death and birth of Jesus Christ, and they are both now named and called and surrounded by absolutely pagan worship that God all through the Old Testament told his people don't do. Can God possibly wink at this? Can he possibly not be mad by it? Can God possibly be looking at the whole world and saying, sure, it's a Giant Springer episode, but I don't care. I'm all right with sin. I don't care. Now, there is, fortunately for us, in the Old Testament, statements about God where it says that he understands that we do things in ignorance, that he looks at us and he knows that we are but dust, and that he pities us the way a father pities their child, because he knows that we just don't know any better. Will God forgive people for the ignorant things they do? Yes, we still call the days of the week by pagan names. Is God, up there ticking off and checking off every time we do that so he can hold it against us? No, we live in a pagan culture, as the Jews in the first century did, that Jesus walked into. But Jesus walked around telling these people, don't be part of that culture. Paul told us not to be conformed to this world, but to be transformed, to have our minds renewed by the Christ that lives within us. Can we change the world and get the whole world to stop celebrating Christmas? No, it's not going to happen. But for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, as Joshua said. And the service of the Lord is such, at this point in my life, where I cannot, in good conscience, continue pagan worship and pretend that it has anything to do with Christianity. You're going to hear this same speech in the spring when it comes Ishtar time. We celebrate the Passover, and we meet here and we take the Lord's Supper because all of that stuff is biblical. But sunrise and Ishtar has absolutely nothing to do with Christianity. Now, what are you going to do about it? That's up to you. Like I said, we ate turkey and more chocolate goodies than we should have and passed around gifts yesterday and had a real nice time together. I think we all have to deal individually with our conscience once we know the truth, because the truth will set you free. And I've been saying that for weeks and weeks now. The truth will set you free. So you go with what Jennifer commented earlier, your Christian conscience, and you decide what's right for your house and your kids. But if I come to your house and you have a manger scene with wise men and Santa Claus in it, I will knock it down. Okay?
You just moved to the other room like it took 2 years to get there?
Yeah, exactly. Okay? You deal with it individually. I can't speak for God and say God's angry about all this stuff. I just can't imagine how he couldn't be. I have an whole Old Testament where he told the Israelites, now when you go into the land of Canaan, there will be people there worshiping foreign gods. Don't be part of it. And now the church that bears the name of Christ has inculcated all those same Babylonish customs that God told his people don't be any part of. How God cannot be upset about that, I don't possibly know. I can't imagine that it does not upset God. But does that mean that Christians, blood-bought Christians, can lose their salvation over these things? No. These are matters of conscience that once you know the truth, you have to deal with God on. Okay? Fair enough? Next week, we'll look at the biblical